Hi guys, in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how I crop football action photos when covering professional football or soccer here in the UK. I'll start by sharing 3 or 4 of my golden rules or key tips really that I follow when cropping, and then we'll dive in to a bit of a live edit for a game I shot this past week. So let's start then with those golden rules. And just to point out at this early stage, a lot of this was formed when I started off in photography, and I sent some of my work when I started covering football to a load of pro photographers, or 2 or 3 pro photographers, and asked them to critique it and send me some feedback. And it was from that feedback that I really picked up these tips from them and have pretty much stuck to them ever since. Number 1 is to straighten your image or level the horizon. In football, the end of the pitch is usually your horizon. Beware, stands in stadia are not always level, and sometimes they are, and it's the pitch that isn't level. So you need to choose what you use as your horizon line, so to speak, very carefully and try and stick with it. Now, as you'll see in this tutorial, there are a couple of moments or instances when you really crop in that the pitch can no longer be your horizon line and something else might be. So you'll see in this tutorial some LED advertising perimeter boards around the edge of the pitch kind of become my tool for straightening the image. Number 2, crop tightly. In action photos, I want to get rid of anything around the edge of the frame that detracts from the action in the image. So I crop tightly in most scenarios, and that is always my starting point. Number 3, don't chop off any body parts. I know that might sound funny, but there are exceptions to this, but by and large, don't chop off any people's hands, feet, arms, legs, heads out of a photo. It just looks weird. And yes, there are instances when it may be unavoidable, but certainly if you can help it, let's keep everyone's hands and feet inside the image. Number 4 is to keep the ball in shot. This is probably relevant for most sports that use balls, but especially for football or soccer shots. Keep the ball in the frame, otherwise you could remove the context from the shot and it will look like the players are maybe doing a bit of dancing or some other weird activity because the context is utterly gone. Number 5, portrait or landscape. Even if you've taken a shot in landscape, if it fills the frame vertically or near to it, it may just work better when it is cropped portrait, depending on its final use, of course. So always consider this element when cropping. And so there you go, there's my golden rules. Let's jump into the edit. So I've got in front of me here a bit of a live edit in some ways. I've got a selection of more than 500 photos. I'm not going to go through them all. From a game I shot here in England this past week, Stockport County versus Tranmere Rovers. It was in the EFL Trophy, I think it's called. And the light was horrendous and the photos are pretty drab, but I thought it's a good example while I've got them on my laptop to go through and see if we can pick out some ways of cropping them and explain and some of the tips that I try to follow. One of the first ones I was told was that you should try to keep the horizon straight. Let's start with this one here, this photo. And all I've done, I've gone to the cropping tool, and straight away I'm just trying to line up that line around here, so just below this line when I bring the full grid on, if we watch, just trying to line that up across the surface of the pitch, just so that the pitch is flat. Now it would be easier to do it using this blue advert here, but obviously the stand is not always going to be kind of on the right level. It could tail off. The pitch is what we hope is flat, and this isn't always the case, of course. Now in terms of the crop here, this player, number 8, is about to take a shot on goal. So I could leave the crop as it is now. However, this player here, number, I think that's 18 or 19 in blue on the right hand side, is offering nothing and he's half cut out of frame anyway. So straight away, I'm going to bring that in a little bit. I'm then going to look at the side around here on the right hand side to the right of this player in white, and also to the left hand side here from the number 17 in blue. There's not much going on, and so one of my themes here is going to be about cropping fairly tight because you want to remove any distractions from the image. That also allows me just to drag a little bit and get another line lined up with the level of the pitch there, and just tweak that ever so slightly. So I think we're not far away now from having this perfectly straight, and let's just apply those changes. So, by the way, these photos might not be masterpieces, as I say, and excuse the noise because I'm zooming in really far, but you can see straight away this player's about to take this half volley. We've kind of got rid of all the disturbances around the outside. We've flattened it out. If this was an editing video, I would go through some different edits we could do here, like maybe slightly increasing the exposure, dragging down the shadows, and maybe playing with contrast and stuff, but I'm not going to here. So by way of cropping it, we've gone nice and tight and we've leveled it out. Let's have a look at some more examples. So that was a nice square side-on kind of shot. Let's scroll down and see what else we've got then. So keeping that horizon or the end of the pitch level in shot and cropping nice and tight are two of the ways I would always crop images. Let's have a quick look at what else we've got here. So this is a good one. This is an edit I did during the game, but let me kind of show you the original uncropped version. But if we click on the cropping tool again and you see kind of the original that we had, I basically straightened that out and I left the crop as that. Now that isn't my favorite crop, but this is because these images were so noisy, and you see even the floodlights glaring off the badge there. You've lost the detail in the badge because of that from the low floodlights. You've got graying in the shot. This guy is pretty dark as well, again really noisy. So ordinarily I would crop this probably quite tight because there's nothing else going on in the space around the outside that adds anything to this image whatsoever. So that would be my preferred crop, but given that it is just a little bit kind of drab and noisy and there's not much going on, I think that is why I might choose just to have a little bit more space around it on this occasion and give the subject a little more room to breathe. Now I'm going to use this photo here, which looks as though it was taken off my big prime 400mm lens, and I know the player is slightly kind of obscured, number 9 blue, but the player in white is who's the team I was shooting. He is the guy in focus, and when my laptop just catches up and clears that up a little bit, if it's going to, there we go. You can see that is the focused player again. Now straight away onto the crop tool, tiny little bit of straightening up here just to make that on my eye it doesn't quite look right. Now some people say that they like this version of the image because of all the green grass here. It's quite a nice effect. Also, depending on the client you're working for, it might be that they want to make maybe a poster or something, and so this space here, this green space, is quite a safe, solid colour for them to add text or a logo if they want to advertise, I don't know, season tickets or something in this space at the bottom. So you do need to always keep in mind the requirements of the client and what they are using the photos for, but this was purely going to be a match gallery because of the lighting and the kind of the game wasn't a league game or a real high tier competition, let's say. This was only ever going to be a match gallery. So if this was an action shot, which technically it is, again, I'm going to want to crop that in quite a lot tighter. Now, you'll notice I've gone quite tight, but not as tight as I could have on the player in white who's in focus, because I don't want to cut this guy's left foot off here or his head at the top. Now, there are occasions when this will work to cut the heads off, and I think I've got not really an action shot, but a shot I can show you from the same game in a second. So if I crop that in, I think it kind of gives a nice kind of perspective of this player in possession of the football about to try and beat his man here. Now, if you wanted to, you could, as I said, crop that in like that and maybe just have a top half, but you lose the ball. Another kind of tip I got early doors that I always try and stick to is have the ball in shot. If you have an action shot where there's no football in it, in soccer or football, then those players could be doing anything. They could be dancing or whatever. And again, there are exceptions to that rule, but certainly in this image, what you wouldn't want to do is crop the ball out, because let's just do it really quick. It loses a fair amount of the context. So that just becomes quite a dull image, and it looks as though he's just staring at this guy ready for a bit of a scrap or something. So I'm going to just take that back up to a nice close crop on the blue number 9 there. Now, you might be screaming at your computer or your TV screen, whatever you're watching this on, saying, why don't you go vertical on that? And I certainly can do. Let's just see how it works first. So you could do a nice vertical crop on this image. And there we go, it just about fits in. So if your client, in this case, I always shoot for a football club, Tranmere Rovers, the team in white. If they want to do maybe full-length portrait photos or player images for the matchday program or something, then photos like this make for a really nice crop for a portrait image like that, or portrait orientation. I mean, I'm just going to leave this as a landscape crop for now. So again, from this photo, it's again crop nice and tight. Don't cut off any body parts and keep the ball in shot. If you are doing any sort of action photography involving football, this player here, this is a really interesting variation actually on what I've just been talking about. So here's a centre back. Not a great photo, but I use this photo because this player had just come back from a long time out injured. He was also only going to play 45 minutes, so the few images I got were all to be taken in the first half, and make sure we could work with those. So two things I could do. If I crop tightly, you can see I've already done a fairly tight crop on this. This player in the blue is always cut off in the frame. So straight away, I don't particularly like that. But if you want to stick with a landscape image here, you've kind of got to use that version of it. What we could do is we could try if this works portrait, which it does. And if we crop that again, I love to go quite tight. So if we crop that down there, what you'll see is we've lost this player who adds nothing to it and has lost his legs here. Thankfully, just something that really irritates me sometimes, goalposts like you've got here. If they come down centrally through the player or something, it can look a bit weird. Looks like he's got a pole sticking down at the back of his shirt or something. But this one is pretty clean. And so that image is good to go. Again, I haven't done much by way of editing any of these either. And if we zoom in, we've got the same noise problem, which I am going to cover how to try and reduce some of that and lessen the impact of noise in a future video. That was, of course, in this video, caused by using a high ISO to compensate for the rubbish floodlights. Okay, so there's a nice vertical crop. Let's just see if we've got more. This one is quite an interesting one actually, because we've got two shots here in the sequence of the player running towards the ball. But with this photo, if you wanted to crop tightly, easy for me to say, you might end up losing the ball out of the shot there, or certainly most of it, and that just looks a little bit weird if you were to follow my previous advice on that. Certainly when you straighten it up with that kind of camber of the pitch here in the background, that ball disappears. And I know that this is slightly overexposed and not a great shot again. So when cropping images like this, keep the ball in shot is really important. But also what makes this photo work, I think, is that the player, if I could draw big lines from his eyes like laser beams, he's laser focused on the football here. So that ball really needs to be in shot for this photo to work. If I crop it like that, it's fine. I don't really love it though. Something in my mind is really irritating me, and what I think that is the gap around the outside of the image below his feet versus below his head, because this is what's in focus. I know I've just said we need the ball there, we do. However, this gap here versus this gap above him is uneven, so what I might experiment with is just trying to increase that up to level that up a bit, and we can move him a little bit left of centre like that, and I think that is a nicer crop. So again, it's just easier on the eye. He's dead centre of frame, so straight away your eyes are drawn to this. There's no kind of inconsistencies by way of crop around the outside, and he is laser focused on the ball. So hope these tips are helping and making some sense. Let me see if I've got what to look at before I just go back to the example I was going to show you before. As well, some of these don't work very well. See these up close shots. I was playing around a little bit with the see if I could get the sweat and the steam coming off people's heads as they're heading the ball on a cold night, but the glare of the floodlights and everything else just makes that a really rubbish photo that will never see the light of day beyond this video. All right, when you're looking to use photos of players heading a football, you'll come across a couple of problems. This is taken on Canon 1D Mark IV, quite an old body, and on the Mark I version of the 400 2.8 Canon lens. under these lights, you see it's so noisy, but just ignore that for the minute because we're talking about cropping. Heading a ball is a really important part of football, but the photos are often a little bit rubbish because players like this guy, if I just raise the exposure a little bit, he's got his face screwed up and he's not looking, and it actually ruins the photo. Let's say his eyes were open and he was focused on the ball for a minute for the cropping on this one. We've lost the feet out of this edit. You see at the bottom here that the feet of these players have gone. I don't think it matters, or I certainly think in this instance I can get away with it because all the focus would be on this player heading the ball. If you notice as well, I straighten this out for the level of the pitch, but because the pitch has now fallen off the bottom of the frame, it looks horrendous having this advert going on an angle. So actually, I would now level this shot up versus, using that blue perimeter advert as a guide. And these LED lights, by the way, do not help at lower league grounds because they're really bright and the floodlights are usually really pretty poor, and so you get such a weird impact on your photos. So heading the ball, if you want to crop, I think that would work. I'm never using this photo, but let's say there wasn't a noise in there and his eyes are open, that would work. The alternative is, let me just see, I saw there was another image in the cycle. Let me see. His eyes have opened back up. I'm fairly certain they won't have done yet. But if you have got a sequence of images of a player heading the ball, go through them and just see if there is one where his eyes or her eyes are open. Okay, just taking a quick look, see if his eyes have opened, and no, they haven't. So already a poor set of images I would leave as they are. But again, if his eyes are open and you wanted to use this image, I think because the ball is quite close to his head, if this was a nice high enough resolution and there wasn't all the noise and everything else going on, I think what you could do is you could probably get away with cropping it in to them, just straighten this image out again. Then you could potentially go in to that kind of crop and see the player heading the ball with the players nearby, and you still get all of the player in focus and in frame who's heading the ball in terms of his foot is here. But obviously you lose the backs of these guys, but I don't think that matters too much. Okay, last thing when it comes to cropping, I said before about try not to crop if players are blurred in shot, then even if they are out of focus in a shallow depth of field, sometimes it's still better, or most of the times it's better to have them all. I think I got a photo of a manager here where this works quite well, I think. And again, I haven't done much with this photo, probably tweaked the exposure quite a bit because the light was horrendous. But you'll see this blurred outline here is a person, but he's that close to the camera. That is that blurred and it doesn't work. Also, if you want to kind of add a bit of artistic merit at all, I think this works quite well because it is so blurred. You can see he's actually in conversation with this guy here with the glasses on. But actually this is one of the team's managers, and you can see that it almost looks like he's looking around the corner, or you've picked him out in a huddle of players, and it just adds to the kind of the mid-match kind of busyness and hectic feel that you often get around the dugout. So that does work. And in terms of cropping, so let's just have a look if I've done any crops on this already. No, this is straight out of the camera. You see there's a guy here, I think he's a bald guy with his ear here. What you could probably do is just crop that out like that. I think that gives you a better image. And then again, what you could do if you wanted to is go even tighter like that. But I think you lose the whole effect of the image then. It just looks a little bit weird. See if that looks any better. Potentially, but no, I think I'm going to stick with what I had a moment ago. And that's the great thing about cropping and using tools like Lightroom, is you can make these cropping changes so quick, make it something you're happy with in your personal style, and go with that. So I hope that's helped. I know that last image wasn't an action shot as such, but a bit of insight into how I crop action sports photos from professional football matches. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you in the next video.